Have you ever thrown away something precious only to spend the rest of your life wishing you could get it back? Some mistakes don't come with a second chance. Some regrets don't fade with time. They haunt you for the rest of your life. And sometimes, when you finally decide to return home, life has already moved on without you. If you love powerful African stories that teaches deep lessons, make sure you stay till the very end. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kim's African Tales because this story will touch your heart. There was a man named Kingsley. He was married to the love of his life, Grace. They were just a simple family. They were happy and comfortable, living life within their budget. These two lovebirds were married for 3 years, and afterwards, they decided to start having children. One night, Kingsley and Grace were talking about the kind of family they wanted to have. Then Kingsley said that he wanted to have 2 boys and 2 girls. Grace didn't object. She simply agreed, and after that discussion, they went to bed. Few days later, Grace and Kingsley were in the kitchen preparing meals together. Then she popped a question to him. Hey babe, what if God blesses us with just 4 girls? What will you do? As Kingsley didn't see that question coming, he was mute for a while before he could answer her question. He simply said that he would love them, although he wants a baby boy. They just laughed over it and moved on. Then months later, they discovered that they were pregnant. Their joy was boundless. Kingsley was so overjoyed as he tried to lift heavy jobs off Grace's hands so that she wouldn't be stressed. He pampered her and carried her like a queen. Whenever Kingsley walked on the street and sees little boys playing, he would be so happy and wishing that his first child was going to be a boy so that they would play together too. So during the days of their doctor appointments, whenever the doctor performs an ultrasound scan on Grace, he will silently be wishing that the doctor will say that the baby in the womb is a boy. But unfortunately for him, he always gets the opposite. Some nights, he would be up thinking about the baby, hoping that a strange miracle could happen. Then came the day of delivery. Grace was rushed to the hospital as she started going to labor that midnight. Before morning, she had already delivered a beautiful baby girl. Kingsley, who was in the hospital all through the night, was so happy, even though he wanted a baby boy first, but he had to make peace with his baby girl, hoping that subsequently a baby boy would come. The baby, whom they named Sophia, was so beautiful. She was the type of baby people loved to carry whenever her mother carries her to church, market, or the supermarket. Kingsley bonded so well with Sophia. He became so fond of her and never wanted her to leave his side. Then 2 years later, Grace became pregnant again. Kingsley this time around had beat his chest that this one would be a boy. But when Grace had a baby, it was a baby girl. So he was so disappointed, but he tried to hide his feelings and concealed his thoughts. He had a friend, Charles, who is his bosom friend. These two knew each other's deep secrets and they had each other's back always. On the other hand, Charles had been married for 7 years and they didn't have a child yet. Him and his wife, Mma, were very hopeful, but Charles never cheated on her or ever thought of leaving his wife. He made sure to give her assurances that God will bless them in due time. So Kingsley visited Charles one day and finally spilled everything that had been on his mind for a long time. He wasn't happy. with the fact that his wife was giving him girls. He was so desperate for a male child. His excuse was that he wanted a son that would carry his family name. So, after he finished speaking his mind, Charles shook his head and told him that he should be grateful with God's gifts. So Charles further told him that he even wished to have just one child, no matter the gender, and he's here complaining about his two beautiful daughters. Kingsley went home that night and he wasn't satisfied with Charles's reply. He started thinking of what to do. Then one day he told Grace that he wanted a boy child by all means. No matter what it would take her, let her do it. That night, Grace cried bitterly, saying that her loving husband is gradually changing into someone she doesn't know, all because he wanted a baby boy. 2 weeks later, Kingsley came back from a journey and told Grace that he wanted her to go see a woman who would help them conceive a baby boy. At first, she was reluctant about that decision, but he insisted she went. So that fateful day, she went to see the woman who people called Iya Abike. As soon as Grace entered her temple, she felt somehow. The environment wasn't the type she was used to, but she had to stay. She spent 5 days in Iya Abike's temple. Moving from one river to the other, she was forced to bath in the river every morning and drink some terrible concoctions to enable her body carry a baby boy. As if that was not enough, they also moved from one prayer house to the other. She was flogged with palm fronds in order to ward off spirits that were stopping her from having a baby boy. Then after the 5 days, she went back home so exhausted, in pains and full of regret. Iya Abike gave her assurance that her next baby would be a boy, and her husband Kingsley was so excited, but Grace wasn't. Then 3 years later, after their second daughter was born, they decided to go again. This time around, throughout her pregnancy, she was forced to practically sleep in Iya Abike's temple. She cried every day, hoping that the torture would come to an end. Charles had to even beg Kingsley to allow his wife come home, but he refused. So, the day of delivery finally came. Kingsley, Iya Abike, and Grace went to the hospital as Grace was in a serious pain due to deliverances that were conducted on her during the course of her pregnancy. As soon as she got there, she was checked and found out that she was not carrying one baby. Her labor wasn't progressing quickly and she was already losing strength. So they decided to do an emergency cesarean section on her. So after a successful delivery, the doctor announced to Kingsley and Iya Abike that Grace had given birth to 3 beautiful girls. Immediately they heard the news, Kingsley broke down in tears. He cried bitterly. And before he could look up, Iya Abike had taken off in fear. At this point, Kingsley was so mad and frustrated. He refused to go in to see his wife and newborn babies. He turned and left the hospital, went to his house and packed his clothes and left home. Grace waited for her husband to show up, but he never did. She cried bitterly as no one was there to clear the hospital bills and take her home. Then the next day, Charles and his wife Mma ran to the hospital. As soon as they heard what happened, they consoled Grace and assured her that everything will be fine. The day came for her to go home. She was discharged as Charles paid off all her hospital bills. On getting home, Grace was greeted by her 2 beautiful daughters. She looked around for her husband to show up, but he wasn't there. At that point, reality set in and it fully dawned on her that she was going to raise her 5 daughters alone. Every night, she would soak her pillow with tears. She didn't know where to start from in taking care of 5 children single-handedly. Meanwhile, Kingsley left his family and went to meet his secret lover Kate in another town. She had promised to give him a baby boy and to make him a happy man. Some days, Kingsley would be filled with regret, but he would shove off the thought and tell himself that he is doing the right thing. Back in Grace's house, Charles and Emma came through for them countless times until Grace was able to move about and cater for her family. Every penny she makes in her provision shop was used to take care of one issue or the other. Her girls were growing and were becoming responsible too. Meanwhile, Kingsley was already frustrated where he was. Kate had 3 children for him over the years, and they were all girls. He started feeling like a curse was already on his head as the universe decided to keep punishing him. At this point, Kate started putting him under so much pressure. She wanted them to live life above their means. She made sure her children attended schools they could barely afford, buy clothes on credit, and live larger than they could even afford. And since he wanted to please her, he tried to do her bidding, but he was not meeting up. His business began to crumble until he became so broke. As their children grew up, Kate made sure she sowed bad seed in her children to hate their father. They did not respect him, even as he was aging. They did not care so much about him. His life was full of regret. However, Grace and her 5 daughters, who were all graduates, were doing so well for themselves. These girls made their mom so proud with all their achievements, and she was happy that she never gave up on her girls. As the years passed, the small struggling home that once echoed with cries slowly turned into a house filled with laughter and purpose. Although Grace didn't have it easy, but it was truly worth it. There were days she had nothing to eat, yet she would smile and tell her daughters that she wasn't hungry. There were nights she stayed awake thinking of how to pay school fees, rent, and still make her children look neat like others. But one thing she never did was to give up. Her daughters became her strength. Sophia, who was the first, took responsibilities early. She would help her mother in the shop and still come out top in her class. The second daughter, Anita, was quiet but very brilliant. Then the triplets, Joy, Peace, and Favor, each had their own unique dreams and were well behaved, even without having a father figure at home. Life was tough, but these girls had something stronger than comfort. They had purpose, and Grace kept pushing them. Your father may not be here, she would say, but you will not lack anything good in life. Then, as the years progressed, Sophia finally became a top fashion designer. She was dressing important people, and her designs were seen in top fashion runways in Africa and beyond. Her designs began to travel beyond the country as well. Then Anita fulfilled her dream and became a medical doctor, saving lives every single day. Joy built her own real estate business, owning properties people could only dream of. Peace became a tech expert, working with big companies and creating solutions that changed lives. Favor became a lawyer, strong, fearless, and respected. 5 daughters, 5 success stories, and 1 strong mother. Grace would sometimes sit quietly in her home, looking at her daughters, and tears would fill her eyes. Not of pain anymore, but of victory. She was happy that she did not abandon her daughters when her husband left them. She saw the future and tried her best to make sure they amounted to something great in life. Meanwhile, Kingsley's life had become something else entirely. Gone were the days of pride and high expectations. His business had collapsed completely as Kate made sure they live life above their means. She had no regard for him anymore, and she did whatever she wanted, even right under his nose. Since Kate had sown bad seed in her children to hate their father, some days they would insult him openly, some days they would ignore him like he didn't exist. The same man who once rejected his daughters was now rejected in his own house. Loneliness became his companion. Regret became his daily meal. There were nights he would sit outside, staring at the sky, remembering Grace, remembering his daughters. He would whisper to himself, "What have I done?" Years of suffering and regret humbled Kingsley. Then one day, after being insulted again by Kate's children, he made a decision that he was going back home to meet Grace and his children, whom he abandoned years ago. All he wanted was just forgiveness. He knew deep down that they won't accept him, but he just wanted to die without the heavy load of regret and pain he had caused his wife and children, who did no harm to him. So on the day he was to travel back home to see his abandoned family, the journey felt longer than usual. Then when he finally got to his old house, he stopped. It was no longer the same. The small house had been transformed into something beautiful. Cars were parked outside. Everything spoke of success. His heart began to beat fast. "Is this really my house?" he whispered. Then he knocked at their door and it was opened by favor. As soon as Grace saw him walk into their home, she was so surprised. He was surprised as well as he saw them. 5 beautiful, confident women, sitting with their mother, all looking happy and fulfilled. For a moment, he couldn't move. Tears filled his eyes. The laughter then stopped. Silence filled the air. Kingsley fell to his knees immediately and said, "I am sorry, Grace. I am so sorry. I have suffered. I have paid for my mistakes. Please forgive me." His voice shook as he turned to his daughters. "My children, please, forgive your father." But none of them moved. Sophia stood up slowly. She looked at him and laughed mockingly. "Father," she said. That word, we stopped using it a long time ago. And by the way, our father had long died. Anita stepped forward and said, "When our mother was in pain, that was the best time you chose to leave us." Joy added with tears in her eyes, "When we were born, you left us simply because we were girls. You thought that having a boy was more important than the girls God blessed you with. We lived our whole lives without a father figure. Our friends mocked us in school because we were fatherless. Now we just showed up expecting us to just forgive you." Peace shook her head and said, "When we needed a father, you chose to be a stranger." Then Favor looked him straight in the eye and said, "Now that we are something, you remembered us?" Kingsley cried even harder when he heard everything his daughters said to him. He knew that he messed up big time and it was too late to buy their love and trust again. After the daughters have spoken their mind, then Grace finally spoke. Her voice was calm but firm. "Kingsley, I cried for you. I waited for you. I begged God for you to come back. You abandoned us when we needed you most. Right in the hospital, you turned your back on us. You didn't even give these girls a chance to know you." As she said that, tears started dropping from her eyes. Then she paused and said, "But that was many years ago." Then she looked at her daughters and said, "These girls became my strength when you were my weakness." Then Kingsley lowered his head in shame. "I don't want anything," he said. "I just wanted to see you all to say I am sorry." Grace nodded slowly and said, "You have seen us." There was a long, awkward silence in the room. Afterwards, Sophia walked to the door and opened it. "You can go now," she said. Kingsley looked up, hoping for one last chance, but he saw it clearly. Life had moved on without him. He stood up slowly. His body was weak, his heart heavier than ever. He took one last look at his family, the family he threw away, and then he walked out of the door. Kingsley lived the rest of his life in deep regret. Due to ingratitude, he lost something money could never buy. He lost the joy of enjoying a loving family. And no matter how much he wished, he could never go back in time. Some choices may feel small in the moment, but they can change your entire life. Value what you have before it becomes a memory. One thing we should always know is that God is the giver of children, not man. So any gender he gives to you, train them well, love and cherish them. Don't let ingratitude rip you of having and enjoying a lovable home. We've come to the end of this story today. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Kim's African Tales for more powerful stories like this. And tell me in the comments, do you think they should have forgiven their father? And I'll see you in the next story.